The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe it.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
The Supreme Court, the institution that most Americans see as the principal guardian of our shared constitutional heritage, is viewed as part of the problem through a political lens. Mr. President, we've heard a lot of charges and countercharges about Judge Kavanaugh. But as those who have known him best have attested, he has been an exemplary public servant, judge, teacher, coach, husband, and father. Despite the turbulent, bitter fights surrounding his nomination, my fervent hope is that Brett Kavanaugh will work to lessen the divisions in the Supreme Court so that we have far fewer 5-4 decisions, and so that public confidence in our judiciary and our highest court is restored. Mr. President, I will vote to confirm Judge Kavanaugh. Thank you, Mr. President.
Give me a break.
Give us all a break, okay, Susan? Give us all a break. This was amazing. She went on for about an hour, and it's just now breaking that Susan Collins is a yes vote tomorrow to confirm Judge Kavanaugh, and so is Democrat Joe Manchin of West Virginia. So they have the votes. There's a guy from Montana, Senator Raines, who isn't even going to be there because his daughter is getting married. And guess what? They don't even need his vote. They don't even need him because they got Joe and they got Susan. They didn't get Murkowski, but they did get Susan Collins of Maine. So he's going to be confirmed tomorrow and probably sworn in tomorrow as well. So much for a consensus pick on the United States Supreme Court. This is because Mitch McConnell, back in April, when Gorsuch was being confirmed, realized that a consensus pick, meaning you couldn't do it with just a simple majority, you had to have 60 votes, meaning you had to persuade at least some votes from the other side of the aisle to vote for a candidate, a nominee for the Supreme Court. Mitch McConnell knew he couldn't do that. He couldn't get those votes. And so he changed the rules and went nuclear. And now we confirm Supreme Court justices like Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh by a simple majority. And so now that they know that all it takes is a party line vote to Supreme Court confirm, this is the kind of candidate you can expect to see from now until the rules change back. I say they're going to vote tomorrow. We're going to vote in November. Let's freaking vote. Let's do this. This is ridiculous already, okay? The idea that you could have a simple majority and that you could confirm a non-consensus nominee, somebody who stands in opposition to everything we believe, and that is that a Supreme Court justice shouldn't be political, shouldn't be partisan, shouldn't have the temperament of a freaking poodle, shouldn't be like some sort of a vicious little conspiracy theory embracing entitled prick. Okay, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was an ACLU attorney. Whatever happened to picks like that? Now, all the picks, every single one of them in this modern era, since Obama, since Obama in his last year in the presidency was unable to even get Republicans to consider speaking to Merrick Garland, who was a centrist pick. A lot of liberals like me wouldn't have been so happy that Merrick Garland was the pick, but they wouldn't even allow him to be consulted. They wouldn't even allow interviews with their precious Republican members to occur. Not even a conversation could happen. And then you have Gorsuch, who's also been picked by this Leonard Leo dude. This is the Judicial Crisis Network. This is a very uber right-wing, hard-right Catholic group of extreme religious people. They don't believe in contraception. They fought the Hobby Lobby thing, and not because Hobby Lobby was, evangelical, because the Catholics and evangelicals don't exactly see eye to eye, except on two things, and that is contraception, because they think birth begins at conception, and therefore things like the morning after pill or things like contraception. They also believe that sex is only for procreation, hence their anti-LGBT stance, but also, of course, Roe v. Wade. That's got to go. So, I mean, it's just so unbelievable. Gorsuch came out of that same Leonard Leo crowd. It's all the Judicial Crisis Network. Makes Heritage look kind of, impotent. Okay, that's how powerful this uber right-wing segment of the Catholic Church is. I mean, Leonard Leo actually moved, into a church so he could go to Mass every day. People don't know who he is. But this is who put these two nominations forward, and Mitch McConnell was all too happy to do the nuclear option for Supreme Court justices. And so it only takes a simple majority. And if that's the case, and you have a simple majority, what you do is you don't pick a consensus candidate. You don't pick somebody that's going to reach across the aisle. You don't pick somebody who's a centrist or a moderate. That's why Susan Collins' vote is so freaking amazing. It's just somebody somewhere promised her something, and the last time she was promised something, she didn't get it. So I don't know. That's up to Maine. That is a complete Maine decision. I would just like to show you who Brett Kavanaugh has been over the years. Who he's been over the years. How many times he has lied. And you know what? I now have all of Leahy's documents. I have every single document that Senator Patrick Leahy tried to get you to look at. Tried to get you to look at the stolen emails. Tried to get you to look at the torture memos. Tried to get you to look at the warrantless wiretapping memos that Kavanaugh was included on. Tried to get you to look at how Kavanaugh lied under oath about trying to shepherd through, Pickering and Priscilla Owen and William Pryor and he does not. The nasty part about him is not that he did it, but that he consistently over the years lied about all these things.
Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give before the committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
So when you recommended Mr. Pryor for the nomination of the 11th Circuit, were you aware that he made these extreme statements? And if so, did they cause you any concern?
Senator Kennedy, I know President Bush nominated Mr. Pryor. That was not, and Judge Gonzalez, of course, chairs the Judicial Selection Committee. That was not one of the people that was assigned to me. I'm familiar generally with Mr. Pryor, but that was not one that I worked on personally.
Okay, can I just, I'll interject. This is from Exhibit 2. This is Kavanaugh's work on Judge Pryor, who called Roe v. Wade an abomination, by the way. There was a 10-minute exchange between Senator Kennedy about whether or not he helped vet or select and review Judge Pryor. There you have him explicitly denying any role with Judge Pryor. Turns out that according to a memo that Senator Patrick Leahy was finally able to get, Kavanaugh was the one who first recommended Justice Pryor and was on the Pryor working group and a strategy group for the Pryor nomination, and he interviewed Justice Pryor. So that's a lie.
What was your role in the original Haynes nomination and decision to renominate it?
with respect to Mr. Haynes' nomination, I know Jim Haynes, but it was not one of the nominations that I handled. I handled a number of nominations in the counsel's office. That was not one of the ones that I handled.
Can you give me a yes or no answer? Were you involved in discussions involving the nominations of Haynes or Bybee?
Senator, I believe those were when I was still in the counsel's office, so if the answer would be yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sir, my first question is this. Did you know that Judge Pickering planned to solicit letters of support in this manner before he did so? And if not, when did you become aware that Judge Pickering had solicited these letters of support?
The answer to the first question, Senator, is no. This was not one of the judicial nominees that I was primarily handling.
Okay, let's stop there. In fact, Cavanaugh was the point person for Mr. Pickering. He was the only White House counsel that was copied on Pickering emails, which we now have. He worked with the Department of Justice. He edited talking points. He talked with Congress. He coordinated events. Saying that Pickering was not primarily something he worked on is completely and utterly dishonest. All the emails are here. They have been tweeted out by Senator Patrick Leahy, and you can see them too if you are so inclined. Also, about his work on Judge Pickering's nomination, he distanced himself, obviously, in his testimony, but saying it wasn't something he worked on and that he was not assigned to it. But the emails clearly show that he did very substantial work on the Pickering nomination, on the J. Bybee nomination, and that he was the person that drafted White House counsel Alberto Gonzalez's op-ed praising and defending Pickering, who was a abomination of a racist. That was the problem with Pickering. So there are lies about Judge Pryor, lies about working on Pickering, and lies about working on J. Bybee. Well, he told the truth. Yeah, I worked on Bybee. He said yes.
On the documents that were taken here from the committee,
I didn't know about the memos or see the memos that I think you're describing. So I think.
You never saw any of those.
No, Senator, that's correct. I don't know. I'm not aware of the memos. I never saw such memos that I think you're referring to.
But in January 2003, let me go to something very specific. Mr. Miranda forwarded you a letter from me and other Judiciary Democrats to then Majority Leader Tom Daschle. You had the full text of my letter in your inbox before anything had been said about it publicly. Did you find it at all unusual to receive a draft letter from Democratic senators to each other before any mention of it was made public?
Well, the only thing I said on the email exchange, if I'm looking at it correctly, Senator, was who signed this, which would imply that I thought it was a signed letter.
Okay, let's stop there. There are many emails available now. Patrick Leahy, if you want to see all of these emails, he tweeted his staff, obviously, tweeted out all the emails. So the first one is a memo Cavanaugh received in his inbox the day after Senator Patrick Leahy had it sent to him. It's an email that contains extensive research on a critical argument that Democrats were intending to make about a judicial nomination, okay? And then there's another one. This is Manny Miranda, who's Orrin Hatch's staffer, obviously. It's subject highly confidential. It's information about what Senator Biden's staff was advising Senator Biden on a controversial hearing. It also says what Patrick Leahy's staff was sharing with other Democrats. It was between Biden and his staff and Leahy and Biden. Here's another one with Manny Miranda sharing that he had information on, quote, 100% info that Leahy is trying to convene the Dems this afternoon. He asked Cavanaugh to refer to a rumor. Don't attribute this to me when sharing the info, even with other Bush administration officials. Here's another email where Cavanaugh forwards an interesting email, is what he called it, an interesting email from another Republican staffer who appears to have thousands of emails from Manny Miranda, and it contains intel allegedly from a, quote, mole with a subject line that says spying. In 2004, Senator Leahy asked Brett Kavanaugh under oath if he had heard of a Democratic mole, and he refused to answer that question. Here's another email that Manny Miranda requested the off-site meeting. I've told you about this, where they wanted to meet to give the physical papers. This was on an appointment of another Trump-appointed judge, Don Willett, and he wanted to hand them paper. Miranda wanted to hand them paper on the Democratic senators. Here's another email from Manny Miranda sharing what Patrick Leahy was looking into regarding a controversial nominee days before a hearing. Miranda even asked for help explaining why is this relevant, because he didn't learn about it from good faith conversations with friends across the aisle. Here's another memo that Kavanaugh received. This one is a private letter. This is the letter, a private letter from Senator Leahy to Senator Tom Daschle. That is who the other person was in this particular instance that we keep playing for you, okay? So Leahy was writing to Senator Tom Daschle, and it was never made public. Kavanaugh had this email before there was any mention of it in the press. Now, this was the most obvious lie. This was obviously a stolen non-public letter. And here is another few memos. These are real-time memos that contain real information about what the Democrats were researching, sharing, and tracking down in real time between each other, keeping each other abreast on, their information. This was on very controversial matters, and he says he got it from friends across the aisle. These were stolen emails. And then there are emails here that clearly show that he's going to not answer questions about multi-year thefts of emails. And that is what he did. He sat there and kicked the can down the road and said, no, I heard about it in the media. And then in his written responses this year, here are the questions that were asked about Miranda's emails. After the theft of confidential Democratic files from senators serving on the Senate Judiciary Committee became public in December 2003, what steps did you take to ensure you did not receive or benefit from stolen property? His response was, during the hearing, I truthfully answered numerous questions regarding Mr. Miranda, and I refer you to those answers. Then they asked him, did you contact and volunteer to be interviewed by any federal investigators in relation to the hacking of Democratic computer files? His answer is C, response to question 18. On how many occasions did Manny Miranda request to meet with you in person? On how many occasions did he suggest meeting you off-site, defined here as neither his nor your office? His answer, please see response to question 18. On how many occasions did Mr. Miranda provide you with paper documents related to Democratic senators, either directly, hand-to-hand, or indirectly through Don Willett? Response, please see my answer to question 18. Did you ever communicate with Manny Miranda while you served as White House staff secretary? Answer, please see my response to question 18. In at least one email, you passed along inside information about Democrats from Mr. Miranda. Then you stated it originated with Democratic sources. Who were those sources? Response, please see my response to question 18. He does this throughout these written answers, okay? And so when they say, oh, he answered thousands of questions, he didn't. All right, let's continue. This is on the warrantless surveillance program.
Staff Secretary, you see virtually every piece of paper that goes to the president. Is that correct?
On many issues, yes, Senator. Not everything.
When you saw, did you see documents relating to the president's NSA warrantless wiretapping program?
Senator, I learned of that program. There was a New York Times story, or the reports of that program, when there was a New York Times story that came over the wire, I think on a Thursday night in mid-December of last year.
You had not seen anything, or had you heard anything about it prior to the New York Times article?
No.
Nothing at all?
Nothing at all.
And what about the documents relating to the administration's policies and practice on torture? Did you see anything about that, or did you first hear about that when you read about it in the paper?
I think with respect to the legal justifications or the policies relating to the treatment of detainees, I was not aware of any issues on that, or the legal memos that subsequently came out to the summer, sometime in 2004, when there started to be news reports on that.
News reports. Okay. Warrantless wiretapping. In a 2001 email to John Yoo, blind copying Timothy Flanagan, Cavanaugh asks, any result yet on the Fourth Amendment implications of random constant surveillance of phone and email conversations? This is the email. This is actually the email. I have these emails now. On the same day, John Yoo wrote a memo to this Timothy Flanagan on, quote, the legality of a hypothetical electronics surveillance program, the warrantless wiretapping program. This memo, there were other John Yoo memos. They provided the legal authority for the warrantless NSA wiretapping program that, they couldn't get signed off on their own. So the Bush administration literally went to the hospital room of John Ashcroft when he was recovering from surgery for pancreatitis, and tried to get him to sign off while he was under the influence of morphine or whatever was in his drip to help him with the pain after post-surgery. And this is when James Comey was acting director, and so he ran over to Ashcroft's hospital room because Ashcroft's wife had texted Comey and said, "Oh my God, they're trying to get him to sign off on this thing, and he's not. He's stepped aside for the duration, and you're the acting. Please come here and keep them from getting his signature. He doesn't know what he's doing." That's when we first heard of James Comey. Now, Cavanaugh said he was not involved in any of this, but there are emails back to 2001. There are emails in 2006. There was testimony in 2006. He was also asked about this. And he always said he hadn't seen anything, he hadn't heard anything prior to reading about it in the media. That's just disproven by all these emails. And then torture. There is he said he was not involved in the question about the rules governing detention of combatants, which was the torture program. And that's false, too. The media reports show that Cavanaugh was involved in White House debates about the capture and detention of citizen enemy combatants without access to lawyers. Emails also show that Cavanaugh prepped the Attorney General for a hearing on post 9/11 detention policies. He was also looped in on legal questions regarding detention. He was included on efforts to spin torture into enhanced interrogation after the torture memo became public. And here are these emails. Okay, so these are the things he lied about, separate and apart from his drinking and Renate and boofing and Devil's Triangle, and whether or not he knows Miss Ford. He said he didn't know, they didn't travel in the same circles, and that's been disproven too. I mean, it's just this is crazy.
To be a good judge and a good umpire, it's important to have the proper demeanor. Really important, I think. No.
I thought it was a Senate.
You got this up. I'm gonna talk about my high school. No, I'm gonna talk about my high school record if you're gonna sit here and mock me. To keep our emotions in check, to be calm amidst the storm. On the bench, to put it in the vernacular, don't be a jerk. The behavior of several of the Democratic members of this committee at my hearing a few weeks ago was an embarrassment. You've tried hard. You've given it your all. What goes around comes around.
Damn.
It's very important at the outset for a judge who wants to be an umpire to avoid any semblance of that partisanship. That's the first, probably most fundamental thing for a judge who wants to be an umpire. This whole 2-week effort has been a calculated and orchestrated political hit, fueled with apparent pent-up anger about President Trump and the 2016 election, revenge on behalf of the Clintons.
Wow. That's about as partisan as you can get. And remember also, this man decided that he would make his case for being a choir boy. He would make his case for being, out of line. In two of the rightest of the right-wing lunatic fringe media outlets, okay? He went on Fox News and he said he was a choir boy, and the only thing he was doing in high school and in college was working hard and going to Little Flower Mass and making friendships with girls and boys, and that he wouldn't have had time to drink, he wouldn't have had time to molest, he wouldn't have... And all that's been debunked, okay? But he went on Fox to say that, and then last night, I always told you, I don't care if you read the Wall Street Journal, because the reporting in the Wall Street Journal is 100% accurate. But I've always said to you, stay away from that right-wing editorial page of theirs, because that's Rupert Murdoch's little outlet in his newspaper. Okay, Rupert Murdoch owns the Wall Street Journal. And so when I tell you to read the Wall Street Journal, I have no problem with you reading it. I do have a problem with the opinion page, because the opinion page is full of bullcrap. It's full of Heritage Foundation op-eds. It's full of Newt Gingrich op-eds. It's full. And last night, Kavanaugh went to this right-wing little... And by the way, the Wall Street Journal, I get a lot of complaints because I read the Wall Street Journal, and in the homework section, sometimes I'll post something that was a great piece of journalism that happened to appear in the Wall Street Journal, and I'll use it and I'll rely on it because I know it's been fact-checked. But it's behind a paywall. And a lot of people complain that they don't want to pay for newspaper subscriptions, even though the Washington Post is like $1 a month. They don't want to pay. And so they complain that I post things from the Wall Street Journal because they don't want to pay. What's so fascinating about this particular editorial was it was removed from behind the paywall so that everybody had access to it last night. Subscribers, Fox News viewers, they don't even know that the Wall Street Journal is behind a paywall. They just saw his op-ed last night saying that, he lost his temper, and this was like a hyperbolic outburst, and it was, a response to questions. He was so frustrated. He was being wrongly accused without corroboration of horrible conduct, completely contrary to my record and character. Except that was prepared testimony. When he opened that particular second round, the first thing he said, because he knew that the opening statement had been released, it had been pre-released along with Christine Blasey Ford's opening statement the night before this hearing was to begin, and he changed it. And he put all this partisan crap in there to please Donald Trump. And that was premeditated and prepared and delivered from a piece of paper. That was not a hyperbolic outburst. That was not him being frustrated. That was not him being very emotional last Thursday, more so than I have ever been. I might have been too emotional at times. That was a premeditated attack on Democrats, on Christine Blasey Ford, on... saying that the left wing had spent millions of dollars when, in fact, the Judicial Crisis Network had spent $12 million, when, in fact, the only ads I saw for or against Cavanaugh were for Cavanaugh, and they were from people who have since removed their endorsement of Cavanaugh. And every commercial that I saw was for Cavanaugh and paid for by the Judicial Crisis Network, who, by the way, is Leonard Leo, this ultra-uber right-wing conservative Catholic who's against the current Pope, who thinks the current Pope is making too many accommodations to LGBT people. This is a right-wing faction of a Catholic, and all of them come out of Leonard Leo's Judicial Crisis Network. The people that McGahn, remember the hearings that were had where Senator Kennedy from Alabama had to sit there and point out that this guy had written Ku Klux Klan messages and this other guy had never filled out a deposition, or in his whole life he'd never taken a deposition by himself? Those were all from the same Judicial Crisis Network. Those were all people who obviously were not prepared, qualified, or in a position to accept, and yet they did, a nomination to a district court or to an appeals court, to a circuit court, and that's who's picking them. That's who's putting them forward. And because Mitch McConnell, Gorsuch came out of that crowd too, and because McConnell knew he couldn't confirm Gorsuch, he decided to pull the nuclear option. And now you get judicial nominees voted on and promoted on a simple majority vote. No consensus nominees anymore. And the nerve of them to stand there and accuse people like Amy Schumer got arrested yesterday. You know, I want Amy Schumer to play me in my life story, in my book, Damn Near Famous, which her agent has, but I have no idea if she's seen it because we can't get an answer. But she was there yesterday, and if George Soros is paying Amy Schumer, I just want you to know he's paying a lot for a protester because she gets, union minimum. She's a member of SAG. You got to pay her. She appeared on the TV. This is all bull crap. There is no George Soros money. I remember Air America was paid by George Soros. Yeah, we only wish we had George Soros money. We only wish. This is so bad.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
What's your feeling about his op-ed this morning, Judge Kavanaugh's? He admits that he got a little too emotional, but he says he can return to being, in his words, even-keeled, open-minded, and independent. Were you moved by what he had to say?
No, I'm not. I understand his emotion and his anger. This has to be a terrible ordeal for him and his family, and I understand that part. But the fire in his eyes when he turned into this partisan scree is something I'm not going to forget. I cannot imagine a Supreme Court justice who would be so partisan, make such wild claims, and then asked to be put on the bench and trusted his temperament. Well, I agree with Justice John Paul Stevens. This should not take place.
Well, Senator, if he does make the court, what then does this do to the Supreme Court?
I don't know. You take a look at Clarence Thomas. He spent 10 years in sullen silence over the experience that he went through. If we go through and put Brett Kavanaugh on the court, I just don't know what he's going to do at that point. But I don't trust his temperament at this point, his demeanor. That is really a basic element when it comes to good jurisprudence. And I'm afraid he has told us things and said things that give us an indication he's not ready for the highest court in the land.
Not ready for prime time. Not ready for prime time. And the ridiculous, ridiculous op-ed.
That op-ed piece is a pretty obvious effort to clean up the debacle of his testimony to the Judiciary Committee a week ago. And that testimony was really profoundly revealing, almost like taking the mask off the judge and showing the real person. And what he did in that testimony was show someone who was angry, vengeful, self-pitying, and threatening. Literally, he looked at the Democratic side of the committee and said, what comes around goes around. He blamed the witness testimony before him, the brave survivor who offered credible and powerful testimony about the sexual assault, blamed that testimony on a left-wing cabal and the Clintons. So this op-ed in no way removes the issue of temperament, and it is the reason that former Justice John Paul Stevens today said that performance last week was disqualifying, and why thousands of lawyers and former judges around the country are writing to us asking us to disapprove this nomination.
thousands of law professors, thousands of them. I mean, it started at 650 and it went to like thousands, like multiple thousands of law professors from all over this country saying, please do not do this. A former Supreme Court Justice, John Paul Stevens, who was appointed by Gerald Ford, for God's sake, and served 35 years on the U.S. Supreme Court. This is a guy who was a conservative justice. He is against flag burning. John Paul Stevens thinks flag burning ought to be illegal. And he was interviewed yesterday by the only reason to read the Palm Beach Post. That is such a terrible, terrible newspaper, our local paper, which is why I tell you not to read the local papers, because they don't, they'll pick up a news story here and there from the national papers and reprint them. So you might as well just read the national papers, because they'll have all of the important stories in there. But Frank Cherubino is a great columnist at the Palm Beach Post, and he is the only reason why I still subscribe to that freaking thing. That, and I need a mullet wrapper every once in a while, you know. You get a bad fish, bad meat or a fish, you need something to wrap it in, so you use the Palm Beach Post. But Frank Cherubino was the person who interviewed John Paul Stevens yesterday. And John Paul Stevens said he has alienated so many litigants. I mean, people who know they don't have a prayer in front of this judge before they even open up their mouths to make an oral argument. That's disqualifying.
At that time, I thought he had definitely the qualifications for to sit on the Supreme Court and should be confirmed if he was ever selected. But I've changed my views for reasons that have no relationship to his intellectual ability or his record as a federal judge. He's a fine federal judge, and he should have been confirmed when he was nominated. But I think that his performance during the hearings caused me to change my mind. I think there's several commentators, Larry Tribe among them, who's a constitutional law professor at Harvard, have written pieces in which they suggest that he has alienated, he has demonstrated a potential bias involving enough potential litigants before the court that he would not be able to perform his full responsibilities. And I think there's merit in that criticism, and that the senators should really pay attention to it for the good of the court. It's not healthy to get a new justice that can only do a part-time job.
What he's saying there, he's 98 years old, God love him, okay? A Republican judge appointed by Gerald Ford, 35 years, lots and lots of, opinions, obviously of the conservative sort. And he said that appearance of his has alienated enough litigants that he would have to recuse himself. Now, if anybody thinks that he's going to recuse himself on the issue of presidential powers or on the issue of anything Trump, you're crazy. He will not do it. But that's what John Paul Stevens is saying, that in the ordinary course of business, he would have to recuse himself, but this is not going to be an ordinary court. He also said that Clarence Thomas, although Clarence Thomas was super angry at his confirmation hearing, Justice John Paul Stevens said that he didn't think that Clarence Thomas had said anything at his hearing that would alienate litigants or was an attack on Democrats or an attack on anybody. He was just fighting for himself when he said it was a high-tech lynching, when he was saying that, this is revenge against an uppity black man who deigns to, I found that heinous back then. But John Paul Stevens did not, because he's a conservative and I'm not. And he said that he got along with Clarence Thomas, and he's a very likable guy, but he does not think Brett Kavanaugh is going to be very welcome.
I disagree with him on most of his important rulings, but as a person, I'm very fond of him. He's a very, very decent, likable person, and you cannot help but like Clarence Thomas, which I don't think necessarily would be true of this particular nominee.
Hi, Frank. I love Frank. Frank's very funny. He writes great columns. But he's saying, I don't think Brett Kavanaugh is like a likable dude. You know, I just leave him where he is. Let's get a consensus candidate. Let's move along here. That it's even worse than what Clarence Thomas did. That's the new position. It's worse than what Clarence Thomas did. I mean, that is just unbelievable. So now we're going to have, what, a third of the men on the Supreme Court have been accused of sexual harassment and or assault. Hey, yeah, no, Trump wasn't a misogynist. No, those women were all lying, remember? They were all lying. Here's Dianne Feinstein today.
Never before have we had a Supreme Court nominee where over 90% of his record has been hidden from the public and the Senate. Never before have we had a nominee display such flagrant partisanship and open hostility at a hearing. And never before have we had a nominee facing allegations of sexual assault. The nominee before us, being considered for a pivotal swing seat, if confirmed, would be the deciding vote on some of the most important and divisive issues of our day. I'd like to start by speaking about some of the issues in relationship to Judge Kavanaugh. President Trump promised to only nominate individuals to the Supreme Court who would be pro-life and pro-gun nominees. Who would automatically overturn Roe v. Wade. In my judgment, Judge Kavanaugh clearly meets the test. In a speech in 2017, Judge Kavanaugh focused on praising Justice Rehnquist and his dissent in Roe v. Wade, where he challenged the right to women's privacy as protected in the Constitution. Also last year, Judge Kavanaugh argued in a dissent in a Texas case that a Jane Doe should not be able to exercise her right to choose because she did not have family and friends help her make the decision.
Garza.
If adopted, this argument could rewrite Supreme Court precedent and require courts to determine whether a young woman had a sufficient support network when making her decision, even in cases, as is in this one, where she had gone before a court. His reasoning demonstrates that Judge Kavanaugh not only is willing to disregard precedent, but his opinions fail to appreciate the challenging realities women face when making these most difficult decisions.
Okay, so that's one issue, isn't it, everybody? That's one issue. That's, whether or not we are entitled to have privacy in our own medical decisions, as it's clearly says that we do in the Constitution. I don't believe there's ever been a law that has been passed that prohibits a man from having any procedure. But there definitely, until 1973, was a prohibition on certain medical procedures available to women, to the point where we would have those medical procedures in dark, dank alleyways or on a kitchen table and die. That's so fascinating. How about on guns?
Another issue that gives me great pause is Judge Kavanaugh's extreme view on guns. In reviewing his record and judicial opinions, it's clear his views go well beyond simply being pro-gun. During a lecture at Notre Dame Law School, Judge Kavanaugh himself said he'd be, quote, the first to acknowledge that most lower court judges have disagreed with his views on the Second Amendment. Specifically, in District of Columbia v. Heller, Judge Kavanaugh wrote in a dissenting opinion that unless guns were regulated, either at the time of the Constitution was written or traditionally throughout history, they cannot be regulated now.
Oh, my God. Right, because they had
in
a
his
case.
own words, gun laws are unconstitutional unless they are, quote, traditional or common in the United States, end quote. Judge Kavanaugh would have struck down D.C.'s assault weapons ban because they have not historically been banned. This logic means that as weapons become more advanced and more dangerous, they cannot be regulated at all. When I asked Judge Kavanaugh about his views that if a gun is in common use, it cannot be regulated, he replied this way, and I quote, "There are millions and millions and millions of semi-automatic rifles that are possessed, so that seemed to fit common use and not being a dangerous and unusual weapon," end quote. Think about that. Judge Kavanaugh made up a new standard that had nothing to do with common use, but instead relied on whether a gun is widely possessed and owned as determinative as to whether it is subject to any regulation. The United States makes up 4% of the worldwide population, but we own 42% of the world's guns. By Judge Kavanaugh's standard, no state or locality will be able to place any limitation on guns because of widespread ownership in this country.
No background checks. You want to have, Uzis now, I guess you could have, and you could have rocket-propelled grenade launchers. And as long as a lot of people buy them, they'll be in common use, according to him. And so it's about how many you can sell and whether or not it was. Now, he's wrong on every point about this because obviously guns and gunpowder and who could have them and where they would be kept were regulated at the time of conception of the Constitution. It said you had to belong to a well-regulated militia. It also had parameters for how you keep and store gunpowder and how these little powder, things had to be, like what size they had to be and how they had to be stored and where they could be stored and all these. And you had to muster, into your militia unit and you were getting instruction, So, I mean, they just make this crap up as they go along. But everybody goes, oh, he's so brilliant, because what they're able to do is think of new and unusual ways to allow America to be infested with violence. Infested. How about on presidential powers?
I'm also concerned about his views on presidential power. Specifically, he has said that sitting presidents cannot be indicted, cannot be prosecuted, should not be investigated, and should have the authority to fire a special counsel at will.
Great.
In other words, the President of the United States is above and outside the law. These views raise serious concerns that should concern us all, especially at a time when the President continually threatens to fire the leadership of the Department of Justice for failing to be loyal and reining in the Mueller investigation. These views alone are not sufficient for me to vote against Judge Kavanaugh. But what we have seen and experienced in the past several weeks has raised serious new concerns. Concerns I believe should worry us all. Judges are expected to be, quote, even-handed, unbiased, impartial, and courteous, end quote. However, at the hearing last week, we saw a man filled with anger and aggression. Judge Kavanaugh raised his voice. He interrupted senators. He accused of Democrats of, quote, lying in wait, end quote, and replacing, quote, advice and consent with search and destroy, end quote. He even went so far as to say that Dr. Ford's allegations were nothing more than, quote, a calculated and orchestrated political hit, fueled with pent-up anger about President Trump and the 2016 election, end quote. Quote, revenge on behalf of the Clintons, end quote.
Sick.
How could he? This behavior revealed a hostility and belligerence that is unbecoming of someone seeking to be elevated to the United States Supreme Court. His display was so shocking that more than 2,400 law professors from around the country have expressed their opposition.
And that's the truth. And this is what is supported by, looking at his decisions, by looking at the hearings, by looking at the Garza case, by looking at his, position on Heller, the dissenting view on Heller. These are and so I really don't understand Susan Collins. I really, honestly don't understand. She made this very long 1-hour floor speech today saying how even-handed and how judicious he's been. I told you at the beginning of these hearings, this man exists to write dissents.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America. From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe it. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
I had one beer. Right? I had one beer. Well, do you think it was? Nope, it was one beer. Oh, good. How did you get home? I don't remember. How'd you get there? I don't remember. Where is the place? I don't remember. How many years ago was it? I don't know. I don't know. What neighborhood was it in? I don't know. Where's the house? I don't know. Upstairs, downstairs, where was it? I don't know. But I had one beer. That's the only thing I remember. And a man's life is in tatters. A man's life is shattered.
Shattered. He's going to the Supreme Court. We now know that there are no more undecided votes. Susan Collins is a yes, and so is Democrat Joe Manchin of West Virginia. And therefore, the vote will be 51-49 or 50-49 because there's a guy from North Dakota named Raines. No, what's his name? I never even... He's like such a... from Montana. Sorry. And his daughters get married tomorrow on the day of my daughter's wedding. And I hope your first child is a masculine one. You know? So, all right, let's hear from you. Xavier in Los Angeles.
What up, Randy?
Hey.
Oh, happy Friday.
Happy Friday, you bastard. By the way, support the show. We're posting this. This particular show goes for free. So if you like what we do and you know that you're going to need us, or you've always needed us and you didn't know that we went somewhere and now we're back, please support the show. Just go to RandiRhodes.com, buy a stinking podcast, buy a T-shirt, buy a nice hat.
I'm going to have to buy a podcast.
Yeah, buy a podcast, donate to the show, whatever you like. Just please do it because this month was very, very tight.
Does it go to, if I do buy a podcast and we do buy podcasts, does it go to victims, male victims that want to grab women by the pussy and then they get held accountable and then we get victimized, us men?
No. We're not a charity. We're a for-profit. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And what's going on with toilet paper boy? Did you see that?
Of course I saw it. I tweeted it last night. That is hysterical. Now you know that video has been removed. I have it, but because we pulled it before, they took it down. But that Twitter of it, there was a tweet last night. I tweeted it out last night. Here, if you want to see it, I'll play it for you right now. And what I did.
I've been watching it.
Oh, no, I'm just saying for people who haven't seen it. This was Donald Trump leaving his Minnesota campaign rally, okay? Campaign rally. After he trashed Al Franken, not for, taking pictures of women, making jokes with his hands over there. No, for folding like a wet rag, for not denying it, for not defending, you know what I mean? For having some sort of integrity and shame. Al Franken said, you know what? I am not fit to hold this seat. I will resign. So anyway, he was leaving and he was going up to Air Force One. And I tweeted this saying, Donald Trump has no friends because he had a piece of toilet paper, a hitchhiker, on his shoe and no one told him. So here it's playing now, but there he is walking up the stairs of the Air Force One. See the toilet paper? Not one person told him. Not one person said, oh, sir, wait a minute, something stuck to your shoe. Oh, my my God. He has no friends. He has no friends.
Right.
No friends whatsoever.
I mean,
now, you know what's really weird? Today, I came out of the ladies, and I had a hitchhiker. It was a piece of toilet paper. The women will know. The women will know. It was literally sticking out of my pants in the back. And the first thing that Brett saw me, and the first thing he goes, "Oh, you got a hitchhiker. Got a hitchhiker." I said, "Thank you. You're my friend." He has no friends. No one would tell him.
That's sad.
Isn't that bad? Listen, it's a perfect metaphor. Toilet paper on a turd. That's what that was. And I could have tweeted that too, but I didn't. I just said he has no friends.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, Randy. Hey, thank you for taking my call. And I just want to say happy birthday to Eric and Elizabeth.
Oh,
Randy,
okay.
Have a good weekend.
Happy birthday. Dan in California.
Hi, Randy.
Hi, Dan.
Hey, so I wrote down a couple things. First of all, I want to point out how the only way they can get around blaming the victim is they say, I believe something happened to her.
Right. That's exactly what I told Scott today. I said, this is what they're going to hang their hat on. Something happened to her, but it's the case of mistaken identity, which is exactly what Orrin Hatch said right out of the gate. Remember? He said,
And
she's
they all
mixed
say
up. She's mixed up.
Right. Yeah. I just wanted to ask, do you think it's going to galvanize the Republicans or the Democrats?
Well, the Republicans are probably very exuberant about this, uber right-wing religious Catholic. They're all about to become very Catholic. I don't even think they realize what they just voted for. But the women in this country, especially in the suburbs, are going to lose their crap. If they weren't registered to vote before today, they are now. All of the women in Maine are going to be livid. All of the women in suburbia are going to be freaked out that there could come a day very soon when they go to the pharmacy and they ask for their birth control and the pharmacist is able to tell them, "I don't approve of your health care choices. I'm not filling your prescription." That's what Hobby Lobby
Randy,
was all about. This man is against coverage for pre-existing conditions, and I'm telling you right now that health care is the number one issue in this country. And how Joe Manchin could vote for Cavanaugh, who's going to take away the benefits that they got from the Medicaid expansion, is beyond me. I mean, these people are going to wake up, but a little too late.
Yeah, I'm afraid it'll be too late. There was a woman, I was driving when Susan Collins was making her speech.
Yeah.
And this woman was pulled over in her car, and her head, I could hear it in her radio. I could hear the speech because it was on my radio too.
Yeah.
And she was just folded over her steering wheel in tears.
Yeah. Women are
furious, like shaking, nauseous, furious.
Yeah, well, they call it Kavanauseous now. There's an actual term for it. We could tweet that. We could hashtag it, Kavanauseous. Right along the Me Too movement, right along Enough is Enough, which are the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas students. This man is so pro-gun. This man is so anti-progress. This man is so corporate. He is so anti-litigant. He is so anti-grievance. He's just, you can go into a bakery now. They could tell you that, you're an unmarried woman and you have a child. I don't want to serve you.
And the only one that voted their conscience was the one not running.
Lisa Murkowski?
Murkowski, yeah. Flake is going to run for something. But
Flake freaks me out. Flake freaks me out because Flake said if there was any evidence that this man lied during his confirmation hearing, he would be a no vote. And I have produced enough documentation. Leahy produced enough documentation. We have shown you over and over again that he lied. Never mind what he did to Christine Blasey Ford. Never mind what Grassley did to her. That they called in a prosecutor to prosecute a woman.
And they're all like,
oh my
God. The process.
Oh my God, but why a prosecutor? Why didn't they just ask her questions? And then the FBI was extremely limited. The Senate controlled that FBI investigation and told them definitely do not talk to any of Ramirez's witnesses. Do not talk to Dr. Christine Blasey Ford herself. They only allowed the answers that she was able to give in 5 minutes of questioning from a prosecutor to be the entire representation of what she could, produce. It was so sick.
What makes everybody so sick is that they scream about the person that leaked, or they scream about how terrible the process is, And they just completely tried to forget that this person was attacked, and everybody believed this woman's 100% that this son of a gun put his hand over her face and was going to suffocate her.
It's just,
I don't think anybody really doesn't believe her.
No, I don't think anybody doesn't believe her. I think everybody believes her, including the people that voted for Kavanaugh. They know that she told the truth, and they just needed something to hang their hat on. And they are hanging their hat on exactly what you've narrowed down to the reason. Oh, my dog's here. Hey, Alan, come get Mommy. Come get Mommy. The reason is it's mistaken identity. Orrin Hatch served this up at the very beginning, and this is what they went with. And obviously, they didn't do a decent investigation. Obviously, they didn't even talk to her. They didn't talk to him. They didn't talk to anybody. Come here, bring my dog.
Randi, you're the best. You've
always
been the best.
Thank you. Everybody want to see my dog? He cheers me up. Come here, pup. Come here, monkey. Alan. Come get Mommy. Oh, look at the boy. Oh. Come here. Hi. No, he's too excited. Look, see him? Oh, how cute. Food. So, what do you think, Howard?
I'm like beside myself.
You did this. This is your career.
It's disgusting.
I'm going to shame Howard for being a lobbyist for 37 years. All right, Cameron in Lakewood.
Hey, Randi.
Hi.
Happy Friday to you.
Yeah.
Boy, first of all, I'm a little discouraged, and I don't think we're going to have a blue wave, and I'm going to explain why.
Oh, don't say that.
Well, I don't take any pleasure in saying it, Randi, believe me.
Then don't put it out there.
Just hear me out. And
All
maybe
right,
you can show me the silver lining. Maybe you can do that for me.
All right, I'll try.
First of all, this investigation, Chris Coons and the Democrats agreed to a limited scope. Why they did that with a time cap on it should have kind of given the Democrats some clue of what a sham it was going to be. Then there was this momentum that you saw with the Democrats when these hearings with Ms. Ford happened, with Cavanaugh, there was momentum. Then Pelosi 3 days ago, brilliant Speaker Pelosi says, well, if Kavanaugh gets confirmed, we won't impeach. What an encouraging message to get Democrats to go to the polls, Randi. If you're politically dormant and have been disenchanted, you're going to stay at home. If you're never been politically active, Randi, do you think that those people are now going to want to go vote for a Democrat who says, hey, Republicans, when you steal a Supreme Court pick and 64 million people voted for Barack Hussein Obama, who killed bin Laden, if you want to go ahead and vote in for the Democrats who refuse to hold these Republicans accountable, because, first of all, Cavanaugh should have never been appointed to the judicial bench to begin with when he stole Senator Leahy's opposition research, which is a slap in the face to Senator Leahy. The fact that message may make people sit at home because the wimpy Democrats never hold Republicans accountable. They didn't hold Bush accountable for the 2 elections that were stolen, the politicizing of the Justice Department, the tanking of the economy. You know the story. We don't have time, unfortunately, to go through all of the disastrous events that went on for 8 years, the lost years. Then you have Obama, who wanted to look forward on the Bush crimes. This is a Bush gift, this Kavanaugh. And Pelosi and Schumer, let me criticize Schumer. Schumer fast-tracked 15 appointees. The legislature has been operated under McConnell like a one-party dictatorship. There is no accountability from the Democrats. But if we sneeze the wrong way, let's impeach Bill Clinton, who perjured himself. But if you're a Republican like Kavanaugh and you perjure yourself, or you're a president who's a sexual predator, a tax cheat, a traitor, well, we're going to let you stay there because you're a Republican and the laws and the rules don't apply to you. See, I'm so upset I can barely spit out a sentence here.
My turn?
Yeah, go ahead.
We haven't had the majority except for 5 seconds in the first term of Barack Obama. So I don't know how you expect any of the Democrats to hold anybody accountable for any damn thing when we had the majority for 5 seconds. And in those 5 seconds, we managed to pass, all kinds of financial regulations to keep the crash from ever happening again. Managed to bail out, people who were belly up, and passed health care reform that gave about 20 million people health care coverage. That's what they used their time for. As far as Nancy Pelosi goes, Nancy Pelosi will not be the next Speaker of the House. Okay? It's not going to happen. You have all these new candidates, people we've never heard of before, young, a lot of them women, in suburban districts that are very competitive. You have 28 Republican-held suburban districts that are competitive this fall, and they will represent more than the 24 seats that we need. Nancy Pelosi will not get their votes to be Speaker. We will have a new Speaker, somebody that is willing to impeach, perhaps Adam Schiff, perhaps an Eric Swalwell, somebody who has access to the documents that clearly show that this president is a criminal, that this president sold out this democracy to the Russians, that this president is a sexual predator, that there hasn't been an investigation of this president. Cheer up.
He's live on RandyRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
Senator Cornyn, you're such a dignified guy. I like you a lot, but I gotta tell you, you're on a brawl here at the 5, so let's start the brawl.
Oh, no. We only have a minute.
When you have politicization of the Supreme Court, I would hope that would concern you, but I know that you refuse to look at Merrick Garland. You said you wouldn't consider it, and now you're in a situation where Democrats are so upset over this process that's produced Judge Kavanaugh. I worry that the court itself is going to, like so many American institutions, absolutely go down in the trust factor among Americans.
Yeah, Juan, since the Bork hearings and where Bork became a verb, and those wars have escalated with the nuclear option by Harry Reid to pack the D.C. Circuit Court. Unfortunately, this has gotten worse and worse. I hope we've reached the end of that, and we can return to some more dignified process, both to the nominee, and it would reflect well on the Senate. But this, we had a lot of hardball played, and unfortunately, I think we're reaping the whirlwind.
Well, but I think blocking, Merrick Garland just sticks in so many people's craw. The twice elected president, and you won't let him even be considered. You might say Kavanaugh was unfairly treated, but gosh, you wouldn't even give Merrick Garland a chance, a fair hearing.
This is the Biden precedent. He said during a presidential election year that you don't confirm a Supreme Court justice. If Hillary Clinton had won, I don't think we'd be hearing anything about Merrick Garland, because she would have made that appointment. But because people chose President Trump, he chose differently. That's why I think people are so upset.
Man, does he is a bullshit artist. They all are. That is amazing. I mean, Juan Williams tried to ask him about Merrick Garland, and this is for you, Cameron. You got to remember that the President of the United States previously had a year left on his term, and Mitch McConnell wouldn't even consider his Supreme Court nominee. Wouldn't even consider it, and we didn't have a majority. We've been in the minority since the first term of Barack Obama. So, people didn't show up to vote in the midterm during the first term of Barack Obama. This is exactly what you get when you sit on your hands and you don't vote, and that's what happened to us. It's not the wimpy Democrats. It's not the Nancy Pelosi's and the Chuck Schumers. They're part of our problem. They're part of not holding people accountable, but they don't have the power to do it, because the real problem is people stay home. We need a big blue wave. That's why I said don't even put it out there. If we don't vote, you're going to get more of this. This is what happened to Barack Obama. Everybody was very, excited. 2008, oh my God, change has come to America. And then in 2010, they sat there. No one showed up from our side to support him with a Congress that would work with him. And in fact, we lost Congress, and then we lost the Senate, and all bets were off, okay? And so by the end of his term, it was time for him to replace Antonin Scalia, who had died, and they said, we're the majority, F you. F you. We're going to hold that seat open until we get the result we want in the presidency. And that is exactly what happened here. And why? Because people, you guys did not vote. Can't get you interested in a congressional election unless there's a big brouhaha over the presidency and blah. And even then, people stayed home because they were Bernies. I was a burner too. But I didn't stay home. I wasn't thrilled, but I knew one of them was a fascist, one of them was a misogynist, one of them was a sexual offender, one of them was a liar, one of them was a puppet of Russia, and the other one wasn't. That's what I knew. So I voted. Was it my first choice? Absolutely not. Was it a good choice? Yes. Was it a better choice? Damn right. So the problem is with us. The problem is with Democrats. The problem is with liberals and progressives. If somebody's not 100% everything that they hoped and dreamed of, they don't go. They don't show up. We got all these new people now. We have all these younger people now. We have 28 Republican suburban districts that are literally in play. In play. If we can get suburban women to pay attention to the fact that we now have 2 molesters on the Supreme Court and a sexual assaulter in the White House who pays off mistresses that, while denying that he ever had sex with them, through shell corporations to hide the payment because it's a campaign finance violation. Unless women start showing up, unless men who love women and are natural allies to women, and again, I keep saying, all men are not Kavanaugh. All men are not Donald Trump. In fact, most men are not. And the ones that would say, get off of her, are our natural allies. And they're going to try and make this a war between us and them? No. I know too many decent men, too many good men. I've had too many experiences with men who stepped up and said, get off of her. These are our allies. These are our natural friends. But like I said, you don't see a whole lot of rape trials going on in the military. And 1 in 4 women in the military were raped. Where are all the rape trials? They cover for each other, these bad guys. They cover for each other. The good guys, those are our friends. Those are our allies. Those are the men, the real men, the stand-up guys, the good guys, the honest guys, the decent guys. Don't you dare let them do this. Don't you dare let them make this case. This is ridiculous. We need 24 seats in the House. There are 28 really red, well, just let's say suburban women's districts. And they are competitive this fall. 40% of Republicans, 74 suburban seats. You know how many of the suburban Democrat seats are in play? 1 in 90. 1. So we need to win this. We can win this. I don't give a damn about all this, this crap that's going on out there about, this has energized the red base, and they're bull crap. They're only 26% of the population. The Trumpers, the Cult 45 members, the MAGAs, they represent literally 26% of America. Independents are the ones that decide elections. Asani in Michigan.
Hi, Randy.
Hi.
Man, I am so stressed right now. I mean, and the sun is not even shining in Michigan right now. I mean, but I feel like that you already say what I wanted to say. What I wanted to say is like this. Elections have consequences.
Yep.
Democrats need to mobilize your family members. Let us just go vote. We have to vote. These Republicans, it seems like they are more organized than us. We have to vote. We have to get out and vote,
Yes,
we have to vote.
I know.
Everybody who's upset right now, do something about it.
Here's what happened today, okay? Nothing happened today. Everything happened today. They voted today. We haven't voted yet. Our day is November 6th. That's the day we vote. They voted today, but we vote on November 6th. People who want to drain the swamp, just know this. This guy, Cavanaugh, is a complete and utter swamp creature. Created by the elite in Washington, raised by the elite in Washington, groomed by the elite in Washington, Heritage Foundation, groomed by the Judicial Crisis Network, Leonard Leo, and all these guys who take care of these law students. Some of them actually run the admission system at Howard's alma mater, George Mason University, that, announced that they were creating the Antonin Scalia School of Law, which spells asshole. They groom these guys like child molesters groom their victims, okay? They raise them, they groom them, they give them clerkships, they shepherd them through the system, and that's exactly how Brett Kavanaugh got to be Brett Kavanaugh. He worked for, here's another lie. He worked for Kozinski, the Chief Justice of the Ninth Circuit, who had to step down because 15 women came forward and accused him of being the perviest of the pervs. And when asked about it, Kavanaugh said, I wasn't aware of it. And every clerk that worked in Kavanaugh's office said, okay, he's lying. They said it out loud. They said it in newspapers. They said it on the TV. They said it anywhere they could get airtime. They said, hey, there's no way he couldn't know. It was a widely accepted thing. And he was on the email chain that Kozinski would send out about screwing your sister in the butthole. I mean, seriously, like sick stuff, okay? Everything to do with anal sex. Why? Because Catholics think if you have anal sex, you're still a freaking virgin. That's why. That's why they're obsessed with the anus. Seriously, they're all assholes. And this is how they get groomed and shepherded through the system and protected by other bad men. That's exactly what happened here. But we didn't get to vote yet. They had their day. Our day is coming. 31 days. By the time we see you on Monday, we'll have less than a month. Early voting will start. Bank that vote. Cast that vote. Do it. Jerry in Baltimore.
Hey, Randy. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Okay. As a Democrat or the Democrats in West Virginia, what are we supposed to do about Joe Manchin? You know, he voted for Cavanaugh.
They're stuck with him. I mean, they've got another choice. And, of course, Donald Trump insulted Joe Manchin over and over again. All these rallies that Donald Trump has in West Virginia, he has them to insult Joe Manchin. He has them to prop up Morrissey, who's running against Manchin. And Joe Manchin still gave Donald Trump his vote. So either, that seat goes Republican, which would really suck, or they're stuck with Joe Manchin.
So that stay at home is not the way to go in West Virginia?
No, it's never the way to go. Never.
Well, you need to talk up more.
There are House members on that ballot in West Virginia. Okay? You could vote straight Democrat in West Virginia. And I would advise you to do it because your standard of living has not improved. In fact, what these Republicans just did to you was put a work requirement for you to get your EBT card. And if you can't find a job in West Virginia, and there's only 1.8 million people in West Virginia, but they still get 2 senators, which just freaks me out. But if you can't get a job in West Virginia, don't look at Obama. Don't look at us. Because we're the ones that tried to get pharmaceuticals and metallurgical coal exported. Rhonda in Erie.
Okay, so if you're mad or if you're sad about what is about to happen, what happened today and what's about to happen tomorrow, here's what you can do. I know that this weekend, wherever you are, whatever state you're in, whatever city you're in, there is some organization near you that is registering people to vote and canvassing for Democratic candidates. Y'all need to go find those places and do it.
The easiest place to go is Indivisible.
Indivisible.
Yes. Indivisible will tell you whether there's in-person canvassing going on near you, or if they need you to phone bank, or, whatever. And they will connect you happily to any organization that you would like to be connected to so you can go to work.
There are other you can just go to your local Democratic Party or your local, like for instance this weekend our local county Erie Democratic Party in the county. I'm sorry, I can't speak today. There's an event tomorrow in which they're going to be registering people to vote. In which many of the candidates. There was a dinner last night. It was friggin' packed.
Yeah.
So the Planned Parenthood is working for, Democratic candidates in each state. So those are good places to start. The second thing is that, we really have got to make sure that we're paying attention to what happens, because even if we flip everything in November, we still got to work hard. There are many, many changes that have to be made from the local all the way to the federal level. So we've got to start paying attention to the things that have to be changed and start making plans to do just that.
You're right. And let me tell you, staying home is never an option. There's not just one person on the ballot. There are some places they're senators. Some places there are House members. There's also state legislators. There are governorships. And these are the people that are going to affect you the most locally. So there are attorney generals. There are local judges. Yes, everybody needs to show the F up. And you need to be registered.
It's the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Dear young people,
don't vote.
Don't vote.
Everything's fine the way it is.
Trump. That was us.
He's our guy.
Tax cuts for the rich? Hell yeah. I'm rich as fuck.
Climate change? That's a you problem. I'll be dead soon.
Sure, school shootings are sad. But I haven't been in a school for 50 years.
I can't keep track of which lives matter.
Sure you don't like it. So, you'll like some meme on Instagram.
If the weather is nice, maybe you could go to one of those little marches.
You might even share this video on Facebook.
But you won't vote.
You young people never do.
But I do. I do.
I do.
Midterms, primaries.
Every single election.
We'll be there, but you won't.
Because we're a generation of doers.
Not whiners.
And we're doing great.
I hope you get that. I hope you really, really get that, ingest it, and make it part of your molecular being. That there are people who are rich as fuck and perfectly situated and don't give a rat's ass about whether or not you could wake up in the morning and your grandkids are going to be able to take a deep breath of fresh air. They don't care because they're going to die soon. And all they know is they can leave billions of dollars, millions of dollars, tax-free now, to their ne'er-do-well offspring. To their pampered little elitist prick children, especially the boys. We learned about that. We learned about how Donald Trump was no self-made anything. He is such a con man. The whole idea that he's a self-made businessman and he knew what he was doing. His daddy was bailing him out all along the way. And when his daddy died and he had sucked out every nickel and every dime from Fred Trump's 70 years of work, he went to the Russians who bailed him out again. That is the truth. And now we got a Supreme Court justice who might agree that Trump could pardon himself, who might agree that firing a special counsel is an obstruction of justice, who might agree that Donald Trump that he can't be questioned, he can't be indicted, he can kill somebody on Fifth Avenue and get away with it, that the presidential powers are that awesome, that one man can be above the law. You know what that is? That's the Enabling Act. That's the beginning of the freaking end. They say law and order. We like law and order. Democrats are for crime. They're for crime. They actually endorse child molesters. They actually elected a sexual predator, an admitted sexual predator. They just confirmed a Supreme Court justice who had a sham investigation conducted after 3 women came forward and said he was part of a gang of guys that raped women, drugged them with Quaaludes, got them like ridiculously inebriated, and pulled them into bedrooms, tore their clothes off, and raped them. Where for crime? Are you freaking kidding me? They are criminals. This is disgusting. This investigation was a complete cover-up. And they can yell and scream and say George Soros.
What's gone on here, Senator? I mean, you've had people thrown out of restaurants. You've had people shamed and criticized online, and obviously protesters in your face. First off, do you believe George Soros is behind all of this, paying these people to get you and your colleagues in elevators or wherever they can get in your face?
I have heard so many people believe that. I tend to believe it. I believe it fits in his attack mode that he has and how.
This is so sick. There is no George Soros conspiracy. Nobody gets money from George Soros except for, presidential candidates. I mean, this is so ridiculous. He's paying Amy Schumer. He's paying me. I wish, George. A check would be great. I need $1 million advertising budget. I could use $1 million. Go ahead, pay me. I'll be, completely transparent if I get 1 nickel from George Soros. Oh my God. Meanwhile, you got the Koch brothers, you got the Mercers, you got the Cambridge Analytica crowd, you got the Breitbarts, you got the Fox News, you got the Roger Ailes, who's also a sex predator. You got the Rupert Murdochs of the world. I mean, you got the Sheldon Adelsons, you got the freaking Heritage Foundation, you got the Leonard Leos, the Judicial Crisis Network. They got a budget of $24 million. Are you freaking kidding me with this? These are some sick fucks. Tony in Atlanta.
Oh my God, you never curse.
I know. I'm so sick of it. I'm so tired of being told that people like me, the whole time I've been broadcast, you're paid for by George Soros. I wish.
I know. I totally get it. I know you're almost at the end. I got a couple of things. Number one, what happens when the documents about Cavanaugh are released and we find out that he's the POS that he normally is?
Well, you see, this is the thing. If you get a Democratic majority, especially in the House Judiciary Committee, they will subpoena those documents, and they will actually find that there was no valid claim of executive privilege and that all he was doing was hiding the matzah, okay?
Right.
And yes, you'll see an impeachment. I mean, obviously, Nancy Pelosi will not be the leader. She just won't. Nobody wants to vote for her. These young, new, vibrant, suburban Democrats that are coming in during this, after this blue wave. Listen, prepare yourself for a lame duck session that's going to blow your freaking mind. And also, everybody, prepare yourself for a contested election. Okay? Don't put it past Trump to say it was rigged. Okay? So we got a lot of crap coming our way. But after the blue wave, you're going to see Adam Schiff as the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. Trust me, there will be an investigation.
That's what I'm talking about.
There will.
I know. But just real quick, the second thing. All right. So every 4 or 5 years, they would reinstate the Voting Rights Act, and then all of a sudden the Supreme Court came in and said that Congress should review it more carefully, and it hasn't been reinstated since. How did that work?
Well, the Voting Rights Act was gutted, is what it was. They said, okay, this was the last decision that they made, saying that racism was over. And we don't need for these places that tend to discriminate against African American, specifically voters. If they were going to make a major change, like moving polling places or changing the ballot or changing the registration dates or changing, the period of time that you had to register, they had to notify the federal government that they were making these changes. The federal government would review it to see if it made sense or if it was discriminatory or whatever. So they gutted it. There's no longer the need to do. And so what did North Carolina do? North Carolina was one of those states that was rampant with racism. And since they gutted the Voting Rights Act, North Carolina can say they want to close polling places in predominantly African-American districts because their bathrooms aren't ADA friendly. They're not wide enough for wheelchairs, so they're going to close all these, polling places. Well, the person that did that, now this is why local government matters. This is like your Secretary of State, okay, in your state that makes these decisions. He actually resigned because they shamed him out of office. But that's what happens when you gut the Voting Rights Act and you don't have to report that you're doing this to the federal government. We need to reinstate that. With Cavanaugh on the court, you're never going to see that. You're going to see a census in 2020, and the gerrymandering is going to be off the freaking charts, okay? And they're going to give themselves a majority for life, for the rest of our lives.
But wasn't that precedent?
Wasn't that what?
Was it precedent?
Was it what?
Was it precedent? Like, it was already set up previously, and it was. Am I saying it right? Precedent.
Yes, precedent.
And then,
stare decisis.
Wasn't that precedent? Stare decisis. Yes.
Yeah.
Wasn't that precedent or stare decisis?
Yes, but it was based on racism being prevalent, and the Supreme Court, to get out of it, said racism is over. There is no more racism. Seriously, this is what Scalia said. Scalia said, no, there's nothing to stop him from doing it. Nothing at all.
Thank you.
They can always freaking find a reason. This is exactly what happened with his confirmation. Oh, we believe her, but we don't believe it was him. That's how they do it. Now, here are some of the things they're going to decide. Whether or not pre-existing conditions need to be covered in the ACA. Now, it's precedent that they are, because that law passed, in 2010 or 2009? So for almost 10 years, pre-existing conditions have to be covered in order for insurance companies to sell insurance policies. Well, they may decide that they don't, because corporations are people, and it's putting an undue burden on those people, the corporations. So we have health care. Whether or not there should be a minimum wage. Okay, minimum wage is precedent, but they might find a way to say FDR's entire New Deal was unconstitutional. They could actually say that. There's a case now making its way through the court called the Gamble case. That's about double jeopardy, whether or not a president could be tried, not the president, but anybody could be tried in federal court and then state court, like Paul Manafort, right? They're going to decide that. I mean, there's all kinds of crap. The Supreme Court is the holder of every civil liberty that people enjoy, every single one. We've had Dred Scott. We've had Plessy versus Ferguson. We've had horrible decisions. Go look up Justice Taney. Justice Taney was probably the most heinous Supreme Court justice we've ever had, and I believe Brett Kavanaugh is right up there with him. Rich in Denver.
Hey, Randy, happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday, you bastard.
Happy Friday, you bastard. And make a donation, everybody in the chat room.
Yes, please. It was so tight this month, and I know why.
Yeah,
I know why. Because rage is exhausting, and this Kavanaugh nomination has gone on for over a month now. And so the past month, I have had a lot of women who just can't listen to it. I could see it. I can see what's happening. Yeah. And it's scaring the bejesus out of me, because if I can see that the people who are like-minded are growing weary ahead of an election, I'm freaked out.
Right. And this is what they want. And to that guy in West Virginia, go out and run for office. You know?
He wasn't in West Virginia. He was in Michigan.
Well, Michigan. You know what? You want to change shit? Like the president said, your job's not done once I'm elected. Get out and fucking vote. I will swear. I'm pissed, Randy. I'm sorry. But this is it. This is the end of our country if we don't win these and take back this country. This is it. It needs to be not just your family, like the guy Get 20 people to vote. Go out, knock on doors, volunteer. Work phone banks, make donations. I hope it's what the Japanese Premier said after Pearl Harbor was attacked. I hope we've woken up a sleeping giant, and I think that's what it is. That woman crying on her steering wheel. Women will save us, Randy, in this country. And there's more women than there are men. And you're absolutely, these up and coming women.
I hear you. I just want to leave you. Thank you very much, Rich Endeavor. I just want to leave you with a thought. Here's what's at stake. The one thing we were always able to tell each other with absolute certitude was that America was a nation of laws. Tomorrow, when they confirm him, it will be a day in infamy because it will go from being a nation of laws to a nation of certain men. That is not America. There is nothing American about it. There is nothing democratic about it. There is nothing that signifies that we are still a representative republic. It means certain men will tell you what you can and cannot do in your own home, in a pharmacy, in a store, in a voting booth. That is a nation of certain men, not law. Buy a stinking podcast.